Okay, so for chapter 19, um, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different here for my cram courses. Normally, I would have as much to say on this as, in other words, I'd have several lectures just like normal. But because we are cramming in so much, I feel like realistically, for you guys to retain anything, I need to kind of reduce a certain amount of information, and I'm always having a debate of what I should pick and choose or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this lecture, and then I'm going to have several documentaries, clips, other videos for you to watch. Um, just know, actually, I have a lot of knowledge about U.S. foreign policy. That's actually one of my strengths. And I actually really like talking about this a lot. So if you want more information and you find some of the sections shocking and you really want to go over this with me, I'm always encouraging you to call me and you know, feel free to do so. So I think as the last several chapters were more of a deep inner kind of existential question that we Americans would have about how we deal with each other. In other words, the relationship between business and the worker, and what is the role of government to be involved in the economy or not, or the conditions. The question of what the role of the government is, and what kind of relationship that we workers want with the business and a political class. That's all about us, right? But when it comes to the United States foreign policy and how we operate and act as a global power, that is when we really start affecting and applying that our critique of ourselves goes outside into the rest of the world. And I think that this has been a very difficult thing for Americans to wrap their minds around. Okay, and I think a better chance of giving you several different perspectives in the lecture that I'm going to give you on a way to look at this particular issue. First of all, Americans don't think of themselves, generally speaking, most Americans to this day, and for a long time, do not think of ourselves as an imperial power. We don't think of ourselves as an empire. We associate that with old Britain and France, and not something that we associate with ourselves. For one, we know that, let's say, India, you can watch countless movies, Secret Garden, and many Victorian films, Sherlock Holmes stories. You'll always see British military with their families in India. They brought their whole families in, right? That was colonization. So it was empire with colonization. But when we're talking about an imperial America, America mainly has used its military might to secure economic interests that help trade. And so the people only ever directly involved, for the most part, outside of the native population that are very well aware of this presence, would be our military and our political and economic classes that are operating within these spheres. So, for example, Cuban sugarcane companies were there were a lot of U.S. investors in sugarcane in Cuba prior to their communist revolution. Most Americans didn't think much about Cuba, probably, but if you were invested in sugar, then perhaps you did. And so, other than the soldiers that came back to tell their stories, if the media didn't really want to elaborate heavily on a foreign policy adventure since we've been, going out into the world. The American public would pretty much not think about it. And what we see in this section is that the media, like always, had its own biases and slants and often sensationalism. I mean, and so I ask you now, think about this. Just reflect about where we are at in America now. How much have you seen an analysis on the TV of U.S. involvement in Iraq, Afghanistan? We've helped Ethiopia fight Somalia. We have the Fifth Fleet involved in Bahrain. We are heavily involved in Africa, Latin America, and there are, we're still in Korea, Japan. We're in all these places. Do we as Americans visualize this? Do we have this? I watched recently on Fox News that what's his name from the Duck Dynasty, the old patriarch guy from the Duck Dynasty, was asked by Sean Hannity his thoughts about ISIS and U.S. foreign policy, and I felt that really summed up where we're at in this country. Now, I'm not just attacking Fox News, but that this is what we get our information from. Hey, he knows, he's an expert on hunting, and he seems to have a good handle of the Bible. Okay, fine, but on U.S. foreign policy, does this guy really have an understanding of as a person, for me, who has a master's degree and has been studying this stuff for several years, he clearly did not, and it was a little bit painful to watch. But what's more painful for me is the fact that this is how American society gets. This is the kind of information we get, right? And then we have our troops come back from these wars, and many of them carry with them this war that maybe they don't feel like talking about in great details, or they've had to deal with it. Like all wars, whether a war is good or bad, it's traumatic, and you can't underestimate that. And it's not like a soldier wants to come back and share war stories all the time. Okay, so we have Americans saying, "Oh, we support our troops," but then we don't really want to come to terms with the fact of maybe exactly what's been going on over there. Now, again, I'm actually going to break this up into two lectures before I go on to the documentaries. What I'm trying to get us ready for is, as we read this chapter and as you see some of the document, especially the one on the American-Filipino War that I'm going to show you, it's shocking to many Americans because we like to think of ourselves always promoting freedom. And we see in this chapter that that's what our politicians have always been wanting to show. Now, some people still believe that, and that's an argument that some can make. But we have to understand why so many people outside of America don't see it that way. Okay? And you're not going to understand some of the anger and hatred that comes against the United States if you're not able to comprehend the way that people from other countries that are under the dominance of U.S. power may feel. And I think that this is an important chapter because this shows us in our rise to power, and it might help us to understand better about how we got to this point now, where we are literally the world's last superpower. There's nobody in the world that dominates the globe with a military presence in so many various places the way that we do. Not China, not Russia, the United States. Okay? Now, Russia and China are definitely major powers, and they are definitely major contenders. But we by far are the most powerful. And how did we get here? And is it good or bad? And that's been a big debate since the beginning. Okay? So this will help you become more educated in understanding a trajectory of U.S. presence in the world. Okay? So as we go into these into this section, you need to really pay attention, and this will help you not only learn U.S. history better, but it'll get you more up to speed on world history and global politics and the controversial roles in which America fits into other nations outside of our country. Okay, so I am going to give one more lecture and then the documentary clips.